Okay, well, good morning and good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's Exploring by the Seat of Your Pants event. My name is Joe Grabowski, and I'll be your host for today. So all month long, we have been talking about endangered species and conservation. So talking to scientists and explorers from all over the world who are doing their best to protect our biodiversity, protect the important habitats that we need to protect endangered species around the world. So I'm really excited. I love when we take our virtual field trips to the Florida Keys. We are visiting the Turtle Hospital. For decades, they have been rescuing and rehabilitating sea turtles found in the waters around Florida, and in many cases, when they can, rehabilitating and releasing them back into the wild. So as you can see, it looks like a beautiful day in Florida. We're joined by Teresa, who's going to tell us a little bit about some of the turtles before we get to a little Q&A action. So Teresa, it's so awesome to have you joining us live today.
Hi guys. So we take in typically about 100 turtles that come in every single year. And of course, it always changes. So first up, we've got Drifter. And so Drifter here is just about 150-pound loggerhead. And so the loggerheads are one of the common species that we get down here. And they get their name because they have a really, really large head. And so they have that large head because they're actually carnivores. So in the wild, they eat things like crab, lobster, conch, anything with that hard shell. And so they need a big, strong beak and lots of muscles in order to bite through all of those hard-shelled animals. So loggerheads. And so Drifter came in about a week and a half ago. He was found floating. And so floating for sea turtles is not normal because they eat at the bottom, they sleep at the bottom, they do everything at the bottom. So the fact that he was up at the top, he couldn't dive down, he was just kind of drifting along with the current, which is how he got his name. The people that found him, they were out there fishing and they saw him floating. They knew that that wasn't good, so then they called us. Turns out, we don't really know why he was floating. He does have a slight case of pneumonia because they have lungs, they breathe air just like we do, so they sometimes get pneumonia just like we do. But he's not floating nearly as severely as he was, which is a good sign. But we want to make sure that that pneumonia gets fully cleared up. So he's currently on some rest, sort of our turtle version of bed rest, and also lots of antibiotics and fluids, things like that. So hopefully, maybe a month or two, we'll get that all cleared up, and then he'll be able to be released. So hopefully not a very long time. But of course, it all depends on the turtle, depends on what's wrong with them as to how long it takes to get them better. So sometimes we get turtles like Heather. So she's a little green sea turtle. And so even though they're called the green turtles, they're not actually green, but they get their name because they're primarily herbivores. So in the wild, they eat lots of seagrass and algae. Here, she gets romaine lettuce, kale, green peppers, all that green stuff. And she eats so much of that green stuff that it turns her fat and her insides green. But she came in just about a month ago. She came in with tumors, which is something that these green sea turtles get. It's a virus called fibropapilloma, and it causes tumors to grow on their soft tissues. So their neck, their flippers, their eyes, which of course makes it very hard for these turtles to see or to swim. And so they have to come in so we can remove those tumors. And then once they're tumor free and they're healthy and those tumors aren't going to come back, then they get to be released. But she still needs some surgeries. So she still has those little growths all over her eyes and her neck and her flippers. She's still a mess, but that's why she's here. Once they kind of start removing those tumors and they start feeling better, like little Maisie. Maisie came in with tumors everywhere. She was a mess, but now she's almost tumor-free. One more surgery and she'll be completely tumor-free, but she's feeling a lot better. She still has a few scabs around her neck and around her flippers from where those tumors have been removed, but otherwise is doing awesome. Plus, she's really, really pretty. But all of our turtles come in for slightly different reasons. So we also have Jack-O-Lantern, came in on Halloween, because what else are you going to name a turtle that comes in on Halloween other than Jack-O-Lantern? But he's another loggerhead, so just like Drifter, but he was found entangled on some trap line. So he was actually entangled around his left front flipper. And so not severely enough that we have to worry about surgery or amputation, but his flipper is just very swollen, kind of sore. He doesn't like to use it very much. So we're doing a combination of therapies, including laser therapy and just physical therapy, but also getting some antibiotics and some deep tissue massage, just trying to get him to use that flipper more. But expecting probably about 2 months before he regains full use of that flipper, and then he gets to be released. But Jack-O-Lantern's kind of a funny turtle. He likes to sit there right where the water comes in, because it feels good. It's like the jet of a hot tub. Because they do have feelings throughout their shell, so they can feel things on their shell. So think about rubbing your fingernail. How you can feel that? That's what they feel. And so they can't scratch their backs. So sometimes they'll sit underneath the water, or some of the turtles will give toys to, and they'll get kind of PVC pipes in their tanks. So that way when they want to, they can hide or they can scratch. But at the moment, Jack-O-Lantern's just taking a little nap. They're not like us. They don't have the same set schedules. It's not like sun is up, they're awake, sun goes down, they go to sleep. So they just take little cat naps whenever they're tired. And when they are sleeping, they can hold their breath up to about 5 hours. So a lot longer than we can hold our breath. So he might be down there for a while. It's kind of hard to make a 150-pound turtle do something that they don't want to do. But sleeping is not a bad thing. They're like us. When we get sick, we get very weak and tired. We just want to sleep all day. Same thing for the turtles. That's why some of our turtles will have very shallow water. That's our version of bed rest. But our newest turtle is also taking a little nap. This is Trinity. She just came in on Monday. So only a few days, but she was attacked by a shark. And so there were people that found her. They decided to name her Trinity because she only has 3 flippers now. She's lost that left rear flipper, got a good chunk of that shell too, but luckily that was all the shark got. It didn't get anything more, didn't get anything kind of vital, so she should be able to heal and should still be able to be released. Typically with sea turtles, as long as they still have 3 full functioning flippers, they can still be released. Think of a 3-legged dog. They may look a little bit different, but they can still do everything normal. Same thing for these turtles. But Trinity, she's still kind of weak, still sleeps a lot because she's only been here since Monday. And while that shark attack isn't really fresh, it's not exactly old. It's probably only about a week, maybe 2 weeks old. So it's still healing, and it still has a long way to go to heal. So she'll probably be here for the next few months. But she's just a really pretty turtle. And one of the cool things that sea turtles do when they're getting attacked by a shark is they'll twist and they'll turn. They'll keep their back or their belly to the shark because it's a lot harder for the shark to bite them that way. Because sea turtles, they're not like box turtles. They cannot pull their heads and their flippers inside their shell like a box turtle can. So the heads and the flippers are always out. So by being very agile, keeping their back or their belly to that shark, they can kind of hopefully hold out long enough until the shark gets frustrated and decides to give up and go find easier prey. But sometimes the shark does get apart, but that's okay. Better a flipper than the entire turtle. So she'll just get to hang out for a little while and get to heal. And that's okay. but sometimes they're not always as lucky. Little starfish, well, little being a relative term, still about 100 pounds. Starfish, also attacked by a shark. So shark didn't really get much of the shell, but did get half of that left front flipper and just about all of the right rear flipper. And so for him, we're still trying to figure out if he'll be able to be released or not. He's only been here about a month, so kind of waiting till he heals up a little bit more. His wounds were a little bit older, so had developed pretty massive infection. So he's still on antibiotics, trying to get that infection cleared up. So at the moment, he still doesn't really like to use those flippers. But as he heals, he's getting more and more active. So when he is healed, what we'll do is we'll put him in one of our larger tanks and kind of test him out. Throw in some live food. Because if he was in the wild, he'd be eating crab, lobster, conch, all of those hard-shelled animals, just like Drifter. So throw in some live food. If he can't catch a crab in a tank, then that means he can't catch a crab in the ocean. But we gotta wait and see. It's a little bit too soon yet, so we'll wait maybe a month or two, wait till he heals up a little bit more and gets a little bit stronger. But he'll get there. But one of the interesting things about us is that we are located right here on the ocean. It's one of the perks of being on an island. But that's why we have so many turtles. It's because it stays pretty warm down here all year round. Currently 74 degrees and sunny. So that's why they like it so much. Because sea turtles, they are reptiles, so they are cold-blooded. They get their body temperature based off of the water temperature. So when the water gets too cold, they get too cold. And they do not like that. But it also makes it a lot easier, so that way when people do find these turtles out there and they're sick, we either can go take an ambulance and we'll go pick that turtle up, or if the boat is close enough, they can come right here into our docks. And then when they're sick, they get their own individual tank. Once they're kind of sometimes getting ready to be released, or if they cannot be released, they get to hang out in here. It's a 160,000 gallon saltwater tidal pool. So it is connected directly to the ocean, because the ocean's not very far away. And so it makes it a lot easier on these turtles because it is a little bit more natural, because it's tidal and there's fish that can come in and out. But the holes are just a little bit too small for the turtles to come in and out. So like Daredevil, that guy that just popped up, he's one that we're trying to get ready to be released. He came in with tumors, been tumor free now for a while. So testing him out in the bigger, deeper, more natural pool, making sure that he does really, really well. And then hopefully within the next few weeks, he'll get to go home. But most of the turtles that are in here are non-releasable. They're turtles that for some reason cannot survive on their own anymore in the wild. So most common reason that is Bubblebutt syndrome, which is what happens when they get hit by a boat, and the trauma sometimes causes these turtles to float. And so that's little Corey, and Corey's got Bubblebutt. That's why she's floating. Same thing with Kent. But the force of the boat strike will sometimes cause air to get trapped, and it causes nerve damage, which makes it so that way these turtles cannot dive. So cannot release a floating sea turtle. So they get to stay here. But to kind of help them out, make them a little bit more comfortable, we attach lead weight to the outside of their shells. So some of these turtles will have those gray circles on their butts. Those are weights. So when they want to, they can go down to the bottom and go to sleep. It's just that eventually the weights fall off. So then they're back to floating. And so even with the weight, they still cannot be released. And then of course, right there next to Kent, hiding in the corner, that's April. April does not have Bubblebutt, but April is blind. He came in April 1st, 1991. He had tumors covering both of his eyes. And in the process of removing those tumors, he lost most of his vision. So he can see shadows, but not well enough to be released. So we have him trained to come to a sound, and we use a pair of tongs and we hand feed him. So that way we can kind of guarantee that he's getting enough food every day. But otherwise, he just kind of does his own thing. It's just like having a blind dog or a blind cat as a pet. As long as you don't go moving around the furniture, they do fine. And then, of course, our other non-Bubblebutt, that's Montel. He's had pretty much everything other than Bubblebutt. So hit by a boat, bit by a shark, entangled in fishing line, and tumors. So he only has 2.5 flippers on one eye. So not very fast. But here, he doesn't have to be very fast. He doesn't have to worry about boats or sharks or even finding his own food. And I was kind of hoping that the original Bubblebutt would pop up and say hi, but he's kind of stubborn. He's our longest resident. He's been here since 1989. So he kind of does whatever he wants. It's a really rough life being a turtle, you know. But he kind of rules this pool because he's been here the longest. But I'll keep an eye out for him because if he does decide to pop up a little bit later, I'll definitely point him out because he is a really cool turtle. But we'll do our biggest turtle because our biggest turtle, her name is Buoy because she floats there like a buoy. But she's about 280 pounds, which is still not full grown. These green sea turtles are the second largest of all of the turtles. They get to be up to about 500 pounds. And with sea turtles, they never stop growing. So the older the turtle, the larger they are. That's really the only way that you can guesstimate their age is based off of their size. So the smaller the turtle, the younger they are. So Buoy, 280 pounds, probably close to 40 years old, which average lifespan's about 70 to 100 years. Whereas little Emerald, only about 60 pounds, so probably only about 10, maybe 12 years old. But then we also have a little guy. We don't have any little itty bitty hatchlings because it's not nesting season anymore. Nesting season is May through October, so it's kind of done with and over for this year. But we do have one little post hatchling who's about 3.5 months old. And he's a little baby loggerhead. So when he grows up, he'll look like Drifter and Jack-o'-lantern and all those guys. But tiny, only 3.5 months old. But he's what we call our Headstart Turtle. So we're going to keep him for about the next 2 years, give him a chance to get a lot bigger, a lot healthier, a lot stronger. So that way when he does get released, he'll have a much better chance of survival. Because when he's this little, he's still kind of bite-sized. So everything wants to eat him. But we'll hold on to him for a little while, let him get big and strong, and then he'll be good. But he doesn't have a name yet. We're having a hard time deciding on a name. So we might eventually end up going to Facebook and having people help us out with that. Okay, time for questions.
All right, awesome. Teresa, thanks so much for a great tour of the hospital, introducing us to some of the cool patients, and obviously all those great facts about sea turtles. Awesome stuff. So I think we should meet some of our classrooms. First, I want to give a big shout out to YouTube. I can see we have some groups tuning in there, and a few have introduced themselves in the chat bar already on the right. So we've got 5 classes hanging out in Toronto in one group with Mrs. Julian. We also have another group hanging out with Miss Way, grade 5/6s. Looks like they're in Toronto as well. So any other classrooms, use that chat sidebar on the right. Let us know where you're watching from and send us in some questions. Let's go to our first live classroom. Let's go to Virginia Beach. We've got some grade 2s hanging out with Miss Burkett. Let me get the microphone turned on. There it is. How are we doing, grade 2s?
We are so excited to be here.
Awesome. Who's going to come up with a question?
All right.
All right. Nice and loud for us when you're ready.
Hi, my name is Leah.
Go ahead, ask your question.
Which kind of sea turtles live near Virginia Beach?
Well, it all depends on the time of the year. Because at this time of the year, when it's cold, you're not really going to find any turtles up there. Or at least you shouldn't. Because these turtles, they don't like cold water. Because they like it where it's warm. That's why I like Florida so much. But they will hang out up there during the summertime when it is nice and warm. So most likely you'll get some loggerheads, some greens, because of course those are the most popular. But you might also get some leatherbacks, because we don't currently have any leatherbacks, because leatherbacks spend a lot of their time a little bit further offshore. They don't like shallow water, but they're the largest. They get to be up to about 2,000 pounds, and they like to eat jellyfish.
All right, good question to start us off. Let's jump to another group. Let's go to, here we go. Let's go to Mrs. Torque's group. They are third graders hanging out in Oakville, so not too far from me. Let's get that microphone turned on. How are we doing, Oakville?
Come up here. Go ahead and ask your question.
How many turtles do you think you have?
Well, currently we have 43. And so that's kind of the low end of average, but it's always changing, because Sunday we had 42, and then we got in Trinity, so she made it 43.
All right, and if you had to take a guess at how many turtles have passed through the hospital, what do you think it would be?
It's probably over like almost 2,000 at this point, because we've been here since 1986. And so in the beginning, we didn't get nearly the amount of turtles that we do now. But yeah, it's got to be over 2,000 at this point.
All right. No doubt you guys are doing awesome work there. And just looking at all that sun, it's making me wildly jealous right now.
We are open to the public. So if you find yourself in the Keys, you can come say hi to these guys in person.
All right. So I want to give a few more shout outs. Looks like we have Mrs. Bedouin's got 3 classes hanging out with her, grades 1, 2, and 3. Looks like Miss Banerjee and Miss T's kindergarten class are hanging out in Toronto and watching. So let's start off with a question here. So, okay. So Mrs. Bedouin's class is wondering, the little loggerhead, the one just bigger than a hatchling, how did that one end up going?
Well, we get the babies, typically when they're babies, so just a few days old, when they don't make it to the ocean by themselves. Because once that mama turtle lays her eggs, that's it. She's done. She never sees those babies. So from the moment they're born, they're on their own. And so they're typically buried in the sand, about a foot and a half deep. So sometimes if they're hatched out a little bit later, they're just kind of a straggler, a little bit of a weakling. They might get stuck at the bottom of that nest, or they're very sensitive to light. So they may get distracted by lights and end up walking towards land instead of towards the water. So that's when they end up in somebody's yard or swimming pool or trying to cross the road. So at that point, they're not really sick. They're just weak and exhausted. This past summer, we got about 100 hatchlings, all for those 2 reasons. So we just kind of kept them for a month or 2, gave them a chance to build their strength back up, and then we let them go. But we're just going to keep this little guy, give him a chance to get that much bigger size. Because within about 2 years, he'll be the size of like a dinner plate. He'll be about 20 pounds. So we would love to do that for all of them. We would just run out of space. So we'll typically just do it 1 or 2 at a time.
All right. Let's see. Mrs. Colbert's group, grade 6s, hanging out in Kellogg. Let me get their microphone turned on. How are we doing, grade 6s?
Good. Okay. We have a name suggestion. Ego.
All right, you hear that, Teresa? They're thinking that little turtle should be Eggo, like a waffle.
Yeah, well, Eggo would be cute now, but not when he's 20 pounds. That'd be a massive waffle.
What's your question? What is the most severe case you've ever gotten?
Well, sometimes we'll have them come in with the tumors, and the tumors are, of course, sometimes crazy. Let's see if DJ Rick is awake. Because DJ Rick, he was named after the rescuer's sons, DJ and Rick. But like when he came in, he was covered in tumors. So he was a mess. So tumors over both of his eyes, all around his neck and his chin and his flippers. He was a mess. But that was August. Now he's tumor free and he looks like a completely different turtle. And so that's kind of one of the great things is that we get to watch them as they improve and they get so better. And so we'll still keep him for a few months because we have to make sure that those tumors are not going to come back, that he stays nice and healthy, and then he'll get to be released. Plus his last surgery was only last week. But typically the most severe of the injuries are the turtles that come in that have more than one problem. So turtles like Montel, the one that had everything, because when that happens, it's just like with people. Like if you break your leg and you have pneumonia, then you kind of got your work cut out for you because now you have to try to save and help two things. So it just makes it a little bit more difficult. And this guy who is showing us his lovely butt, this is Bubblebutt. The one that wasn't up and about earlier finally decided to come up, but that's the original Bubblebutt. So he's the longest resident. He's the one that's been here since 1989.
All right. Well, I'm glad Bubblebutt made an appearance for us, a very famous turtle. Let's see. We're going to go now to another classroom. This classroom, they're joining us, third graders, with Mrs. Auburn Esther. Let me get their microphone turned on. How are we doing, third graders? Oh, try that again. There we go.
Show him your hat.
Cool turtle hat.
And it even has padding in the inside.
Very nice.
Okay, go ahead and ask your question.
What's the heaviest turtle and the biggest turtle that you have?
Let's see if she's still awake. So she's the one that's 280 pounds. So probably close to like 40 years old. Yeah, she must be sleeping now. She must be taking a nap because she's not up top anymore.
So is she the biggest you've ever had or just currently? Have you had a bigger?
Just currently. The biggest turtle we've ever had was about 375 pounds. She was a green, came in a few years ago entangled in a crab trap. So for her, we actually had to amputate her flipper because it had caused a lot of damage, but she was able to swim fine. She was able to be released. But currently, largest is Bowie.
All right. So Mrs. Ayer's class is hanging out with us in Toronto. I know it's a mixed group of classes. Let's get that microphone turned on. How are we doing, boys and girls?
We're grade 2-3.
2-3, very cool. Who's got a question?
So this is Karim, and he's going to ask a question.
Where did you set free your giant loggerhead?
Well, we do have our biggest loggerhead. His name is Rebel, but he's about 240 pounds. So not quite full grown. Loggerheads will get to be about 400 pounds. But he likes to sleep right at the base of the piling. He likes to sit right there next to the bubbler, and I'm pretty sure that he likes the vibration. which is why we kind of like massage chairs so much. But he likes to live up to his name. He doesn't always come up to say hi. So the biggest loggerhead that's currently up and about and awake would be, I think, Drifter. He's just a few pounds heavier than little jack-o'-lantern. But they're still pretty cool turtles, even if they are asleep.
All right. Well, I'm going to hit you with a two-parter from online, from YouTube, Teresa, because we're getting lots of questions. I want to make sure that we work some of them in. So a couple classrooms. Ms. Patrick's group is wondering how they get them together. And we'll get a second part in there. We've got a group from Royal Orchard Middle School, and they're wondering why some of the turtles look like they were alone in the pool.
Well, first part was how they get the tumors, right? Yeah. Okay. The tumors seem to be linked to water pollution. And so we're not exactly sure how, but it is an aggressive herpes-like virus. So here we are back to Heather, who's taking a nap again. But in the areas where there's more water pollution, environmental stresses, especially where it's warm, there seems to be more tumors. But exactly how closely they're linked, if it's a direct cause or just that the environmental stresses weaken the turtle's immune system enough to allow the tumors to grow, we're still trying to figure that part out. But it does seem to be at least partially water pollution related. Now, as to why some of the turtles are alone, it's because in the wild, sea turtles are solitary. So they do not travel in groups. So the movie Finding Nemo got that part wrong, is that they don't meet their parents, they don't go traveling their currents together. So when they are here, especially when they first come in, that's when they're still very sick. And we don't always know if they're contagious or not. So same reason as to why when we get sick, we have to stay home from work and stay home from school so we don't get everybody else sick. That's why we have to sometimes keep the turtles isolated, especially when they currently have tumors like Heather, or just recently tumor-free like Maisie. Because we're not completely sure how that virus is transmitted, we can't put them together because we don't want to accidentally find out that that's how it's transmitted. So we just keep them by themselves. And then once they are healthy, and the ones that we're trying to get ready to be released or ones that cannot be released, those we can put together. But the turtles, they don't care. They're not together. They're not social animals. So when you do put them together, they just ignore each other. They're not mean, but they're not exactly best friends either.
All right. Well, let's get through a few more questions to see if we can do a speed round through our classes. So we'll start off with Mrs. Colburn's group, see if they have another question.
How many pounds of food do they eat a day?
Well, that all depends on the size of the turtle. They eat on average about 1 to 3% of their body weight a day. So that little baby isn't getting a whole lot of food, whereas the larger turtles, like Drifter, anywhere between 1 to 5 pounds, really.
All right. So I think this is a good time to pop this question in. This is a question from a group in Toronto, the Allenby group, and they're wondering, what can students do to help the turtles? What can we do?
Well, you're already partway there because education awareness is a very large part. Just because you may not live in Florida and you may not be around sea turtles all year round doesn't mean that things you do still affect them, because the ocean is massive and they're all connected. And that's kind of one of the easiest things to help, is that make sure you don't litter, make sure you recycle as much as you can, because the less things that end up in the ocean, less things that these turtles will eat or get entangled in. And especially things like single-use plastics. Like, no, don't take a plastic water bottle, bring your own. something that you're just going to use one and done. When you go to the grocery store, bring your own bags. And even things like balloons, things you may not think about, but if they go up into the ocean or into the air, they have to come down eventually. A lot of times it does that over the ocean. And then floating in the water, those balloons and even those plastic bags look like jellyfish. So the turtles, they can't tell the difference. So they end up eating that stuff and then it makes them sick. And then hopefully we can find them in time and we can help them. But sometimes that's not always the case. The turtles don't know that we're here and we're here to help them. So it's not like they're going to come into the doctor on their own. We have to find them.
All right. And I know that there's an option too to adopt some of the turtles. So some of the resident turtles like Montel or Bubblebutt, and I can share that information with the classrooms after the hang.
Well, yes, because that's how we're supported, is by everybody that visits us and kind of helps us and donates and adopts, because that's how we're funded. That's how we are able to take care of all of these turtles.
All right, let's jump to Mrs. Burkett's group. I see someone waiting at the camera for us.
Why is friendly? And why are snapping turtles like sea turtles?
Okay, did you catch that, Teresa? It was a little bit quiet.
Why are snapping turtles not like sea turtles?
There you go. I think that was it. Yep.
Well, that has to do with the fact that snapping turtles are freshwater turtles. Sea turtles live in saltwater. And so sea turtles can handle very small amounts of fresh water. And same thing with the freshwater turtles, they can handle very small amounts of salt water. Same reason why if you ever go to the ocean, why you can't go drink ocean water, because that would make you sick. And so same thing with these turtles, is that they can't go back and forth. But kind of the biggest thing that if you just looking at the turtle, you can tell the difference is by looking at their feet. Sea turtles spend their entire lives in the ocean. The only time they're ever on land is nesting or hatching. So these turtles have flippers because they're built to swim. Whereas freshwater turtles, like snapping turtles, they have to be able to come up out of the water to sunbathe. So they have a little webbed foot with a little claw with the tip of each little toe. And then you also have land turtles like box turtles and tortoises that cannot swim. So if you see a turtle that has actual feet, don't put them in water. They would sink.
All right. This is Air's class. I see someone there. Nice Canada sweatshirt. We're ready.
What's your oldest turtle?
Our oldest turtle is going to be our biggest turtle. So that's Bowie here. She decided to wake up. So she's the one that's 240 pounds. So probably close to 40 years old. Because even though Bubblebutt has been here since 1989, we're thinking he's kind of in his mid-30s, late 30s. But we don't know for sure, especially due to his size, because he's probably not going to ever get as big as he possibly could.
All right. Mrs. Auburn Esther's class, your microphone is on.
What do you use to stamp their names on their backs?
We use a non-toxic paint pen to write their names on their backs. It's kind of a safety precaution, especially when they're patients, because we want to make sure that we're giving the correct medication to the correct turtles. Same reason why when you go to the hospital, you get a wristband with your name and all of your information on it. Because once they've been here for a while and we've learned them, it's pretty easy to tell them all apart, just like these non-releasable turtles. But when they first come in, sometimes we need a little help.
All right, and let's jump to Mrs. Stork's group. I can see that they're there and someone's waiting. We're ready for you.
How many times do you feed them a day?
Typically, it's about twice. Sometimes we'll have a turtle that needs a little bit more food, so they'll might get 3 times. But these non-releasable turtles, these guys get fed pretty much all day long. We do tours throughout the day. So as part of the tour, so if you ever come down and visit, you get to feed these guys. Because these guys are healthy, And so they don't have to have nearly as strict of a diet as everybody else. So in the wild, they'd be grazing all day long because they don't have set meal times in the wild. And so here they kind of just get the chance to eat and kind of graze all day long whenever they're hungry.
All right, and one more question from YouTube. We have a class wondering about the buckets and the pipes that are in the individual tanks. What are those for?
Well, sometimes they're toys because especially once they start feeling better, they need some obstacles. They need things to swim around or hide under or even rub their shells up against. And then some of it's just for water quality, because even though we do drain these tanks every single day and we scrub them and we clean them, we still want that water to be circulating all day long. So like we always have the water coming in and a little filter for when it goes out. But Pink here, who came in with tumors, she gets a couple of toys. And of course, she's sitting on the far side away from the toys. In a lot of ways, sea turtles are very much like cats. Get them a nice, pretty cat bed, and they want to sleep in the box, not the bed.
All right, very good comparison there, definitely. And the cats that I've experienced, they seem to like boxes that are too small for their body. Your favorite thing for cats.
Yeah, sea turtles like to stick their head right up against the edge of the wall. They seem to think that if they hide their heads and that they can't see us, that we can't see them.
All right. Well, I want to give a huge shout out to the classrooms tuning in on YouTube, to all the classrooms tuning in with us live on camera. You guys are awesome. Thanks for all the great questions and hanging out with us today. And Teresa, to you and all the turtles and staff at the Turtle Hospital, we love doing these virtual events. Thanks so much for spending some time with us today.
You're welcome. We like being able to teach people.
All right, very cool. Well, I will share with the classrooms information about how you could adopt a turtle if you did want to do that as a class. But for now, I'm going to turn all the microphones on. Boys and girls, let's get nice and loud. A big goodbye and thank you. Here come the microphones.
Well, we gotta do extra big one.
We're ready for you. All right.
Have a good day.
And thanks, classrooms, for hanging out with us today. And Teresa, thank you so much. Tons of fun as always.